And so we just need to keep going, no matter what happens. Even when people try to stop us, and that was an attempt, a blatant attempt from the enemy to stop me from doing what I was doing, because as I'm working at this ministry, and whenever I picked people up on the ride back to the shelter or to wherever I was taking them, I would talk to them of things of God. I would talk to them of things of salvation. I would talk to them the benefits of having that relationship with Christ, and why we need to live the lifestyles that we're in. So one of the best ways for the enemy, one of the ways for enemies to cut us off is either through our families or is to destroy our credibility. A lot of times false accusations will stick. I've seen times where people have had false accusations and they had false witnesses. Well, prime example of Christ. False witnesses. He had false witnesses to come against him, and he was put to death. It's part of prophecy, is what was supposed to happen for him. But there are people who have been put into jails and prisons because of false accusations and circumstantial evidence and false witnesses. And it comes out later on that these guys really didn't commit the crime. But what's unfortunate is that these guys have lost so much time in their lives because of this being falsely imprisoned. Or people have fired from their jobs because of being falsely accused. And then later on, it's come back and we made a mistake. Well, guess what? There's that time where people have had that doubt. And you know what happens? This is the one thing I need to encourage you guys. I need you guys to remember. Be careful of what you say, because you can't take words back. Even though these guys were cleared, there's that thought that went out that this person did that. We cannot, and I'll emphasize that again, we cannot, I probably should have underlined it, but we cannot allow the attempts to discourage us. We cannot allow the attempts of people or others or things to stopping us to discourage us. If you look at Romans 8, here Paul said, likewise the Spirit also helps in our weaknesses, for we do not know what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself makes intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. Now he who searches the hearts knows what the mind of the Spirit is, because he makes intercessions for the saints according to the will of God. And yes, I know he's talking about that. He's referring to times when we're praying, we don't know what to say, but he's also talking about this, that we can depend on the Spirit to help us in those times when we're struggling. When we want to react in the flesh, when we want to be so discouraged and say, you know what, I was accused of sexually harassing somebody. I was accused of hurting somebody. I was accused of stealing. And we get discouraged and we get so worked up, and we can react in that. And the problem with that is that makes us look guilty. But if we walk in faith and we keep going forward in faith and we keep trusting that God's going to take care of it, and even during working through that discouragement, I'm not saying don't be discouraged. Well, God wouldn't want us to be discouraged. I'm not saying that you're bad if you're discouraged. I'm saying that if we take and process that discouragement and work through it, rather than reacting into it, our testimonies are going to show us as being that was a false accusation. God's going to bring the truth. And our testimonies will speak louder. And we also find out is that we are always going to have those who are going to try to stop us. The biggest person who's going to stop us, or the biggest one who's going to stop us, is the adversary. And the other thing is not only is he going to use people or things to stop us. Look at Job, for example. Look at Job. What happened? Job was a man of faith, right? And here he's talking to God, and he said, the only reason why Job is following you is because you provide for him. But even when God allowed Satan to do the things he did to Job, what did Job do? He still continued to be faithful. And that's the biggest thing that we can pick up out of reading about Job. we will always have people to discourage us. We're going to have people who come alongside of us. It could be a legalist. It could be somebody who is of another faith, or a cult who come in and say, what you're doing is wrong. We know of the cults that say Jesus is not the Son of God, but he became a God, but before he died, that Spirit of God left him, and that therefore we can become gods. Do you know that there are some Christian churches or churches in the Christian faith that say that we're gods? Little g, they'll say that we're gods. That's sad. That's a misinterpretation of the word. And they're going to come alongside of us, and they're going to do the things like the Pharisees did and the leaders of the Sanhedrin did with Paul. They're going to try to stop us because they're benefiting from people to making them think that we're gods. And we need to learn the truth, and we need to speak the truth, and we need to not be afraid. Paul was encouraging the Thessalonian church in 2 Thessalonians 3:13. He said, "But as for you, brethren, do not grow weary in doing good." He was saying that we shouldn't be weary in what we're doing. Don't be weary in doing good, because God is going to use that, and he's going to bless you and other people. As we wrap up the chapter, what we find in the last 13 verses is that we need to move forward despite questions of our intent, because people are going to question us, and we need to move forward. So pick up at verse 23. "And he called for 2 centurions, saying, Prepare 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen to go to Caesarea at the 3rd hour of the night, and provide mounts to set Paul on, and bring him safely to Felix the governor. And he wrote a letter in the following manner: Claudius Lysias, to the most excellent governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them. Coming with the troops, I rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman, and when I wanted to know the reason they accused him, I brought him before their council, and I found out that he was accused concerning questions of their law, but had nothing charged against him deserving of death or chains. And when it was told to me that the Jews lay in wait for the man, I sent him immediately to you, and also commanded his accusers to state before you the charges against him. Farewell." Then the soldiers, as they were commanded, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. The next day they left the horsemen to go on with him and returned to the barracks. When they came to Caesarea and had delivered the letter to the governor, they also presented Paul to him. And when the governor had read it, he asked what province he was from, and when he understood that he was from Cilicia, he said, "I will hear you when your accusers are also come." And he commanded them to be kept in Herod's praetorium. So it's interesting that the guard, when he was sending him out, what did he do? Paul was sent out in the middle of the night. That happened to him before when he was accused in Jerusalem, right? In the middle of the night, the apostles lowered him down over the wall in a basket so that he could secretly be brought away from his accusers. The guard did the same thing. And not only did he send him in the middle of the night, but he put this whole army around him to protect him. Because he was confused. He was like, what's your intent? Why? I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on. I understand that they have some questions about your law, but is that deserving of death? No. So I'm going to surround you with all these guys to protect you. So he sent him out with these guys in the middle of the night. So the next morning when they showed up, well, where's Paul? Well, I sent him on to speak to Felix. And here's Felix saying, wait, I'm going to wait for your accusers. I'm not going to do anything until we wait for your accusers. And so there's some time that had spent for them to be caught up. But so when I was looking at this chapter, I've read through this chapter so many times, and I've read over that word Antipatris. And I said, what is that? Because I thought it was some guy. But what I found out is it's a place between, it's a city of Samaria. And so it's an actual place. And it's between Caesarea and, it's between Jerusalem and Caesarea. And so this is the stop that Paul had made. But we see that there's questions of intent, and we need to be faithful. Paul did not react. Paul didn't get all upset. Paul knew that he was doing what he was to do by the Lord, or was being sent by the Lord. It's an example we need to keep going, no matter what happens. And the first point that we can find out is that we know that people are always going to question our intent. People will always question what we're doing. Even if we're doing it in love. I'm sure some of you have experienced some of the things that I have when I've stopped to help somebody, or I've given somebody something that they needed, like it could be money for gas, or it could be food, or why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? I'm just doing this because Christ loves us and he provided, and I'm just sharing what he's given me so that you can be taken care of, and hopefully you can be in a relationship with him. That's all I'm doing. I'm not doing it for anything more than that. And many people I've talked to a couple times after that and haven't seen them again, and a lot of people I haven't seen ever again, and some people it's opened up doors to build relationships. And they live by the example of Christ in me. But people are going to question our intent, and we always need to know that. And in Galatians 1:10, Paul said this. He said, "For do I now persuade men or God, or do I seek to please men? If I still please men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ." Paul's referring to the false prophets of the time that he was dealing with, but he's also saying, here's my intent. I'm not trying to persuade men or God, and I'm not trying to please men. All I'm doing is I'm trying to serve God. I'm just a bondservant of Christ, and that's what we should be doing, and that's what our intent should be. It's because we're bondservants of Christ, we should be acting accordingly. And the other point we find is that moving forward helps them to see God's work being done. And here's an example. Look at Exodus 14. Exodus 14, verses 13 through 18. This is after Moses and Aaron brought the Israelites out of Egypt, and they're being pursued. So verse 13, "And Moses said to the people, 'Do not be afraid, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see him again no more forever. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'Why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward, but lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And I indeed will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. So I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his armies, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gained honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen.'" And we know that Moses did as he was commanded. He raised the staff, the Red Sea was parted, the Israelites walked through on dry land. But when the Egyptians tried to pursue, what happened? The Bible talks about they were getting stuck in the mud. Their wheels were falling off. They were falling off their horses, and it's a picture that was painted, and all of a sudden, once the last Israelite crossed onto dry land, what happened? The sea came down and drowned all the Egyptians. It was a sign of God's work being done. Yes, we're going to be questioned. Yes, we walk forward in faith. That's a big faith step, right? Think about that. How do you think you would feel if all of a sudden you see the sea parted and you're told to go walk on dry land, and you're walking and it's dry land? But you hear the roar of the sea around you, and it's all, you guys can hear the roar of the sea being poured because the waves are being crashed back into the sea to keep you from being wet. And the picture that we get when we see that crossing is none of these guys got wet during that time. None of the Israelites got wet. And they were dry. And I don't know about you, but at first it'd be kind of like, okay, I'm dry. And then once I realized that, I take that baby step, and I take that baby step, and I realize I'm going to be okay, and then I start taking bigger steps, and the next thing you know, I'm starting to sing praises. Because now I know that I'm taking faith steps, and because I've taken the faith steps, that I know that God's going to take care of us. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may he lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. God bless, guys.
Lose my way and I forget my name. Remind me who I am. In the mirror all I see, this is what I wanna be. Remind me who I am. In the loneliest places, when I can't remember what grace is. Tell me once again who I am to you, who I am to you. Tell me, let's not forget who I am to you. I belong to you, to you. My heart is like a stone, and I'm running far from home. Remind me who I am. In the mirror of my love, afraid I'll never be enough. Remind me who I am. If I'm your